All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to something slightly different. If you guys been watching my D&D deep dives, one of the things I've been doing is making suggestions on how to kind of rebalance the classes and subclasses, and to make things easier for Soren, who's the amazing person that has created all of this stuff. This is going to be a summation video that just covers the changes that I recommend and why. And I'm going to do it one of these for every class, and they should be relatively short. So that Soren can watch them and, take their own notes and figure out if they want to implement them or if they don't. So that being said, this one is going to be about the Gunbreaker. Now, the Gunbreaker we talked about in four videos over to the 2 weeks. The Gunbreaker itself comes from being a tank in Final Fantasy 14, and it has some really interesting aspects. But the big change that I recommended with the base class itself was the idea of the munitions. The munitions you can, in the base class, you can load up to 4 munitions at a time, and it's a limiting factor to prevent you from going just crazy. And you have to use an action to reload. You eventually, at level 7, get the ability to reload as a bonus action, and you can put up to 8 munitions in at a time. Those numbers are a little bit high, and they unbalance the class, especially once you start dealing with the subclasses. So my recommendation for munitions is, without having to rebalance all the additional damage into the things like that, a really simple way to rebalance the class so that you're not over dealing damage and doing more damage than literally any other class in the game currently every turn. Is simply change it from your initial munitions is 2 that you can load, and then when you get quick hand, you can load 4 munitions. That limits it significantly, especially with Renzo Kukan, actually, which is a subclass of ability. Actually went through and did the math on everything, and Renzo Kukan can out damage a the most powerful 9th level spell. You can do more damage than a 9th level spell, and you can use it more often than 9th level spells because of everything else. So, yes, just that one change of changing it from it's 6 to 8 normally to 2 and 4 massively changes how the class is balanced and puts some limitations on the class that are really necessary to keep it in line with the base 5th edition classes. Going forward, there really wasn't a ton of other things with the base class that I thought needed adjusting. Obviously, the additional damage that you can do with, Burst Strike, and especially once you get into things like Blasting Zone and Sonic Breaker, could be a little bit overpowered, but there's already limits built into them, and everything else with the base class just kind of makes sense. So there's no real reason to change anything else. When we go to the combat styles, which are the subclasses of the Gunbreaker, the first one we covered was Breaker style, and the big change that I think needs to happen there is for Slash Bang. Beginning at 9th level, if the creature is medium or smaller, they are stunned until your next turn instead of knocked prone. This doesn't need to be there. Stunned, the condition, is supposed to be something specific to the monk. It's one of the reasons why there are almost no creatures in the game that have immunity to stun. The designers of 5th edition have said specifically stun is meant to be something that is for monks. It's meant to be unique to monks. So anytime you're going to be giving something that's meant to be unique to a class to another one, you want to be kind of careful about it. And to be perfectly honest, Breaker Style doesn't need the stun. The prone condition is already super useful, especially if you combine it with Tether Bracer, which reduces their speed to 0 when you're right next to them. It basically gives you all the benefits of stun except for the incapacitated status, which you don't really need. with maimed reflex, making it so they can't make opportunity attacks. Maimed reflex becomes completely useless if Slashbang can stun anything medium or smaller. And I understand the medium or smaller was meant to be a limiting factor, but it really isn't. And stunned is such a massive condition. It is a really game-changing one, because incapacitating them does things like it breaks all concentration. Anything that they're concentrating on is done. It makes them auto fail all strength and dexterity saves. So stunned is such a powerful condition that you really don't need it. Again, combining the prone and the tether bracer already gives you everything you would really need for this to work. The other thing that I recommend is simply change the wording. Change the wording for Tether Bracer. In the second paragraph, it says, on a hit, you deal 1d6 piercing damage, and the creature must make a strength saving throw against your Gunbreaker save DC, becoming grappled on a failed save. Don't use the grappled word, because in 5th edition, grappled is a condition, and what it means is your speed is reduced to 0. But what happens with the Tether Bracer is your speed isn't reduced to 0 until the enemy's speed isn't reduced to 0 until you are within 5 feet of the enemy. Up until that point, they can move anywhere around you. They simply can't move further away from you. So I would say call it being tethered. Create a new term. Do not use grappled, because grappled is already a condition in 5th edition, and it creates some confusion because they're grappled, but they're not really grappled. And that clears up a little bit of confusion about that. Other than that, the breaker style itself is really solid. Like I said, change that wording for Tether Bracer and remove the stun aspect of Slashbang, because you don't really need it, and it's perfect. Going to the Lionhearts as a style. This is the one that probably has the biggest changes that need to be made, because this is the subclass that, with the combination of Renzo Kukan and Elemental Slash, with the old version where you could have up to 8 munitions loaded at the time, you could out damage a wizard casting 9th level spells. And that just really makes the wizard, who doesn't have any martial abilities, feel like they've just wasted their time. Their big thing is they have these huge burst moments where they can do crazy, amazing things, and yet this Lionheart-style Gunbreaker can do as much damage to a single to the target that they can, but can do it more often. So the way that I thought to change this, first thing, with Elemental Slash using a D12, it doesn't really need to level up all the way to 4 D12 damage, which each Elemental Slash. Again, that's when we talk about the illusion of choice, Elemental Slash is always going to be better than Burst Strike. 100% of the time. There's never a situation when you're going to use Burst Strike instead of Elemental Slash. And at that point, you're not really, you're replacing Burst Strike with the Elemental Slash. And I think it's better to give them the option of, well, you can use Burst Strike, or you can use Elemental Slash. And the easiest way to do that is simply start it at D12. You don't need to change the dice at all. But instead of leveling up the damage at 6th level, don't. Leave it at a D12 for 6th level. At 12th level, you can turn it to 2d12, and then it really doesn't need to get any bigger. It is still more powerful than anything else, and the fact that you can double dip with it, with the fact that because it's additional damage and not based on a save like Burst Strike is, it will benefit from critical hit damage. Because it's elemental, it can benefit from vulnerability to the damage. Like, there's still a lot of reasons to use Elemental Strike without having to make it, oh, this is the single most powerful ability in the entire game. For the most part, everything else in the class is really kind of fixed with the change that I recommended where instead of 6 or 8 munitions on a reload, it's 2 or 4. Because that makes Renzo Kukan still a very useful ability, but it limits it significantly, not being able to make, 5, 6, 7 attacks in a single turn. Which is a defining feature of the fighter, is the fact that they can make more attacks than any other class. That's why you play a fighter, and that's how you build around a fighter. Unless you're a Gunbreaker and you can Renzo Kukan and just completely demolish every other class, especially if you have something like a Frostbrand or a Flaming Sword or something where you get additional damage every time you hit. A Sun Sword or something like that, you will absolutely outclass everyone if you can do 7 attacks or 8 attacks in a turn. This just brings it in a little bit more by just limiting it to that 2 and 4. It's still very powerful. It's still going to let you do really cool, awesome things. You're still going to feel cool and amazing, just like you do in Final Fantasy XIV when you just pull off that full Renzo Kukan combo. But it's not going to be massively overpowered. Then we get to the revolver style, which is basically, there wasn't a whole lot that I thought should change. The only thing I wasn't super thrilled about was the fact that the kind of defining aspect of the revolver style is the fact that you can use the gunner shot a little bit more. But in order to do any of the other useful things, like when you get bombardment at 14th level, you can use your burst strike and blasting zone and all that using your gunner shot. That still means you have to basically double dip for your gunner shots, and it does make it feel a little bit more limited. My suggestion is simply give the revolver style one additional thing that they can only use for gunner shots. Tie it to your proficiency bonus, where you goes, hey, when you choose revolver style at the third level, you get special gunner shot munitions that you can use. I know it's adding an additional thing to track, but it's basically just giving them extra munitions that they can use just for gunner shot, and it'll allow them to use that very special aspect of this style that it's built around, without having to feel like they're not able to use the rest of the kit of the Gunbreaker. And again, it's still going to be limited. Tying it to their proficiency bonus means it will get more powerful as they level up. The other suggestion I would make is for armor piercing round. The vast majority of enemy monsters you're going to fight in D&D for 5th edition have natural armor. So limiting this only to creatures that don't use natural armor makes it an insanely limited feature. Just get rid of the natural armor. If you're going to pierce, man-made armor, why not be able to pierce natural armor as well? They are designed to be equivalent. Like, this natural armor is designed to be to mimic the protective ability of chainmail or of plate mail or something like that. So I would just say get rid of the natural armor aspect, because if a creature has natural armor, the base of 10 is increased to the appropriate number. That just means that's how natural armor works. Is their base AC is increased, and then they add their dexterity bonus on top of that. So just get rid of that. Armor piercing round is still such a cool feature that there's no need to really limit it that much. Otherwise, yeah, the rest of it makes sense. It's really interesting. And yeah, that is the Gunbreaker. Soren, I hope this is a little bit easier to digest than 4 videos across 2 weeks. If any of you that have been watching, if I missed any of my suggestions, put them in the comments down below, or go over to the Reddit. The link is in the description, and mention them in the post about that particular video. Simply because I don't want to miss anything, and I recorded this like 2 weeks, or I recorded the original videos like 2 weeks ago. So I may have missed things. But anyway, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.